Hi everyone, I'm Michael Stice, I'm co-founder and CEO of Conversion.io, and this is our mobile growth podcast where we discuss how to launch, grow, and successfully monetize mobile apps. And today our guest is Matt. Matt is mobile growth and app store optimization specialist at Klarna, which is a huge e-commerce payment solution platform with a very large mobile app. I know that Klarna's mobile app is in top 10 or top 15 on the App Store in shopping category. And previously, before Klarna, Matt worked at ex-Phiture, which is a mobile growth agency, one of the top growth agencies from Germany. So, hi, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I do know that you focus a lot on A/B testing in what you do with mobile apps. So I guess that's the topic that we want to discuss today. And the first question, without further ado, let me just ask the first question. And what should the mobile app A/B test at all? Because there are a lot of stuff that you can A/B test. So what do you think on that?
Sure. Hi, Michael. Hello, everyone. Once again, thanks for having me. And yeah, that's true. Like a huge part of my day-to-day job is focused around A/B testing. And to answer your question in short, I believe we should basically A/B test every single step where a user is making any kind of decision or is supposed to take an action that has got an impact on our KPIs. So as easy as this answer may be, there's a lot uncovered in it. I would say that I'm not like a huge supporter of the idea with testing everything, because sometimes this can lead to a very wrong direction when users are not making any kind of decisions, or their own marketers are not making any kind of decisions, and they make even like the smallest adjustment with changing like one minor icon, in my case for let's say on 6 or 7 screenshots, and they are testing it. Of course it doesn't make sense, but at the same time we still know that we don't want to base on our gut feelings or the so-called hippo syndrome, right? The highest paid person opinion. And that's where A/B testing comes in handy. And yeah, as I said, everywhere where user makes a decision, makes an action that has got an impact on our KPIs, it would be sensible to make such tests. So it could be screenshot testing for App Store, in-app purchases testing, it could be also paywall testing, and whatever else comes to your mind when users make a decision that's got an impact on your metrics.
And how do you approach data and statistics when doing A/B testing? I think a lot of people are talking about A/B testing, but not everyone understands how complex it is, and that A/B testing is not just splitting, let's say, users in two groups, measuring some data, and then still making the gut decision, right? There should be more complex mathematics involved.
That's true. That's like a thing that a lot of people are not aware of. And in fact, actually, A/B testing is not that simple. It requires a bit of homework before. You have to know how it works. You have to know some of the testing principles, statistical principles. But also to make like a whole topic a bit easier, I suggest that we would split the A/B testing into two halves. And the way in which I'm doing that usually is that the simpler way of testing, I call it split testing. And this is basically when you don't make like a real statistical test, when you base on probabilistic methods. For ASO, this is usually Bayesian and frequency statistics, which kind of predict what will be the outcome. They validate your hypothesis, right? When we come about split testing, this is as simple as it sounds. So we split the traffic, which comes wherever you test it, and you get at least two variants usually, and then you observe the performance on those two variants compared to each other. And this is not any kind of advanced statistical method that you use. You basically observe the current performance, and based on your current performance, you're able to say which variant performs better. Of course, there is still like a bit of statistics involved in there, because I always suggest that even if you run a simple split test, we should always make what I call it a post-test evaluation. So with the use of the simplest A/B testing calculator, which is available everywhere in the internet, you just put your visitors, you just put your amount of conversions per each variant, And then the calculator produces the results, whether they are statistically significant or not. So you can learn basically with the use of such calculator if your results are due to the change that you did or if they happen by a random chance, right? And that's what you basically want to learn from a split testing. And when it comes to this more advanced A/B testing that I already introduced a bit, right? So the one which bases more on a probabilistic method, frequencies and Bayesian statistics, then you really have to stick to all of the statistical principles. So you need to make sure that you, first of all, understand and calculate your sample size, you reach it. You also reach the significance that you set for your experiments, and like a industry standard for that is 95% confidence level, which means that it's like a p-value lower than 500. And then where you might be sure that the results your experiment produces are statistically significant, valid, and that you will possibly see a reflection of the same results if you apply your variant to 100% of traffic.
And so what are the most common pitfalls, maybe misconceptions, when it comes to A/B testing?
Yeah, so like, first of all, as I mentioned before, treating A/B testing as it's something, super easy that you can just test anytime. It would be really great if all of the marketers who are interested in A/B testing would do a bit of homework before and read a bit about the statistical testing, or at least understand whether they want to make a split test or an A/B test, right? The one which will be more of a statistical approach, which will predict the outcomes for the future. But also one of the most common pitfall, which is kind of universal, no matter what kind of test you do, is that we skip the most important part, the first step, which is research. And everyone's speaking about research, but no one is really, maybe not no one, but a lot of people are skipping that crucial step, while it really fuels the whole testing process, the whole testing roadmap that you can create later on. So basically, it's really important to make sure that, first of all, you have in place some kind of qualitative service, right? So qualitative test that you have conducted with your users. And it's also good to look at A/B testing as a quantitative way to validate all of your qualitative insights, right? So once you already make some kind of service, you talk to them, you know what are their pain points, what they care about the most in your app, then you can, using the A/B testing, quantitatively validate all of the assumptions which you made from the before stage, which included the research, right? And also one thing connected to that, I believe that A/B testing is making a lot of us marketers a bit lazy, because right now, no one wants to base on our gut feelings. So everyone depends a lot on A/B testing, but it's got also its, I would say, negative side. The negative side is that we trust so much in A/B testing that we no longer care about, talking to our users, making research, about tracking competitors, reading some cases, playbooks, or at least being on top of the best practices. And again, I'm not saying that we should blindly follow best practices, but marketing, it's not like an abstract field, right? There are some certain laws of marketing which you can learn. And usually those laws are included in best practices. So if you follow that, your testing roadmap, your test will be much more thoughtful, sensible, and they will be basically much more, have much more potential to succeed once you launch a test finally. So this is like one huge pitfall that I would say is probably one of the biggest ones. And one connected to that, and another one is that when we don't make the research in advance before we start even thinking about testing roadmap, a lot of marketers are focusing on testing aesthetics, the visual adjustments, rather than basing on a solid hypothesis, right? So if we think about A/B testing as a way to simply, as a tool, one of many others, to validate our hypothesis, then it makes much more sense not to base on, ideas such as let's test the icon from home to an arrow, whatever. But we are trying to think about testing as a tool to really help us figure out whether the idea we found out through the data, through research, makes sense if we apply it on a specific market to specific users, right? So except from basing on visuals adjustments, let's move into validating hypotheses based on previous research that we did. Another pitfall that we can use is that we not always I would say are aware of our market capabilities, and this is especially popular pitfall when it comes to screenshots A/B testing for ASO. So my area of focus. And what I mean here is that usually we got just like one variant which is universal, and we want to test that variant on multiple markets. Let's say we make like one adjustment, and with that one adjustment we set like the experiment to last for 2 weeks in our biggest market being, let's say, US, and our smallest markets being Czech Republic. And we accept the tool to produce the same kind of valid results in 2 weeks time, right? Of course, it will never happen because we got completely different traffic in those markets. And there are also like other things which might go wrong, for example, with the cultural differences, right? But sticking for now to the traffic size, it's completely unreasonable to make the same kind of test in different markets, because basically the smaller the market is, the bigger level of changes we should do, right? So with smaller markets, we should go bolder, we should have much more distinct changes, while in the biggest one, we can allow ourselves more detailed, meticulous changes, which may drive more granular insights, right?
Is it do I understand correctly that this is mainly because you just have much fewer customers, let's say, in a small market?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
much harder to detect the results, so you have to
exactly.
really
So
make
when we
some
are talking
drastical
about
changes.
when we are talking about the statistical testing, you need to calculate your sample size, and basically the two factors which influence your sample size is, first of all, your conversion rate, and second of all, the degree of changes. So it's called a minimum detectable effect that you want to predict, right? So you can't have the same detectable effect that you want to predict in US, your biggest market, than in, let's say, Czech Republic, your smallest one, because it will just need like 10 times more time, right, to produce statistically significant results. And yeah, there are many other things that we can mention here. I don't know if we want to still stay in this topic, but I got like a few more, so I'll be happy to share with.
Yeah, I mean, if you have some good practices with A/B testing, something that you recommend to do when launching A/B testing, that would be super interesting.
Sure. Yeah. So also one more, I'm looking just right now into my notes, and I'm looking for the most universal ideas. And I guess that there's also this common misconception about testing only one element at a time. And a lot of experts are saying that if you want to make sure that your experiments are correct and valid, you should only test one element at a time. And I not necessarily agree with them, at least not fully, because sometimes when you make just one small change, basically you will see no result, no difference when you compare the data from your variant A to variant B. And what I would suggest is, instead of testing just one change, let's test one tactic, like one hypothesis at a time. And if your hypothesis includes changing multiple elements, such as, you test a button on the first screenshot, you test a caption on the second, but it's all in line with the same tactic, so it all sticks together and it makes like a logical sense, that once you will be evaluating the data and performance, you will either be able to say that, all right, this idea worked or not. It's much better than just changing, one graphic element and then not getting the conclusive results at all. So this one is like a very common misconception. Don't know if you will agree with me or not, but at least it works like that very often for ASO.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think like one of the major limitations is exactly that you don't have enough users, or you'll have to wait for too long. So maybe it's kind of easier to measure if you just change one thing. It's kind of easier to make conclusions in theory, but in practice, it will take you forever to actually get the results. So you need to, I understand what you are saying, that you need to come with some hypotheses, and you can test several things together if they are logically linked together, right? So your ultimate goal is to get the results and get them as fast as possible. So
exactly, yeah. And also maybe to like finish the pitfalls section, the one more idea that I would really like to mention is that no matter how sophisticated tool we use, or whether it's just like a simple split testing tool, we should never like fully trust the results that the A/B testing tool produce. Even, if we stick to all of the statistical principles, we got all of the sample size reached and our confidence level are 95% on above. Even in that case, there is still at least 5% of chances that the results that we see that the tool produce will not be actually included in those results. So it means that it can be higher, it can be lower, we never know. But basically, we never know for 100% whether the change we observe with A/B testing will happen in the reality. And what can we do with that? So I suggest that we always connect A/B testing with another like validation method, as I call it. So if we decide to implement a variant from our A/B test, no matter if it's a paywall test or screenshot test, always let's make sure that once we apply it, we conduct a sequential analysis, right? This is something which is also called before and after analysis. So we take the data, we look at it 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, 4 weeks before, 4 weeks after. The longer basically the period, the more reliable your data will be. And you compare how the performance looks like before and after this update happened, right? By this way, you minimize the chances that you, for example, apply a false positive variant. There are also other ways of like validating your test results, such as, for example, having the same variants as treatments, right? So this is called ABB testing. When you add this one variant just to assess how good your testing tool is. Or the last one, which is also called backward testing, which means that you basically relaunch the test with the treatment that you decided to choose as your new default variant and the old default as a new treatment, right? Just to double check whether the results that you are seeing get a reflection in this second iteration. And also that the last thing, which is also super crucial, is that whenever it's possible, we should connect this kind of quantitative data that we get out of our A/B testing tool, again, with a qualitative data, right? So once we already gather in the research phase the qualitative insights, and then we see the outcomes of our A/B test, we may check whether they cover with each other or not, right? And if they do, we got on a much safer side, and we might be much more confident that the results will see reflection in reality.
Yeah, and by the way, I remember about this so-called AA testing, when you before starting A/B testing, if you have some tool that you use for A/B testing, you can just start the test without any changes to see if the tool actually works, and compare that without any changes, these two identical groups, they don't provide different results. So it's like validating that your setup is correct in general.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is also basing a lot on the idea of the minimum sample size, and it's often used as a use case to make marketers realize that they really need to reach those sample size when they are, A/B testing with some kind of more advanced statistical tools. Because like the baseline case was that even when some marketer launched AA test, one of the other variants used to have like plus 5% conversion rate in comparison to another, which was basically the same, right?
Yeah.
And that was due to not enough sample size in the test.
Yeah, and about the tooling, what tools do you use for A/B testing? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so of course it all depends, on the placement of the element that you want to test. Since I am ASO lead at Klarna, we work the most with App Store optimization, and I work with testing on App Store and Play Store. And on Play Store and already on App Store as well, we got the native testing tools, which of course got their drawbacks. But the positive thing is that, first of all, they are built inside the app stores, right? Which means that users don't have to go anywhere else. They are not redirected to an external website. The browser is not suddenly opening for them once they click on an ad. Everything happens internally, and it's also free. But yeah, there are also some drawbacks, and especially on iOS, which has recently launched a product page optimization testing environment. There's a lot of things to wish for improvement. But let's hope that this will soon evolve and will improve into the better direction. And yeah, when it comes to
At least, I just wanted to add that at least they have introduced these tools. It was like, I don't know for how long the App Store is available, 10 years, more than 10 years,
Yeah.
15 years. Now there is something to work with.
That's true, and it all also indicates that there is probably some hope in the ASO industry that they will still evolve, and overall, like mobile marketing, such a distinct movement from Apple when they have to spend a lot of time probably and money on developing those testing tools, only shows us all mobile marketers that the industry is gonna evolve and that it's just gonna grow, right? And so it's all definitely like a change for better, but we also have to probably wait a bit longer to have this tool much more optimized.
Yeah, another question I wanted to ask you, do you have maybe some like case studies, some specific examples how you can use A/B testing to get some specific results? After all, our listeners and our clients, they kind of practice oriented, they all run their mobile apps. So it's super interesting to hear like specific data, specific case studies.
Yes, sure. I got a few, and it depends what we want to touch specifically here in the first place. But let's say that we will focus on A/B testing, which are on case studies of A/B testing, which can work nicely with, for example, performance marketing, right? Because this is like one case study that I can give, and it almost always works in the same good manner. And what I mean here is that with the use of A/B testing on both like ad side as well as ASO side, you can really gain amazing results thanks to providing a consistency between among your touch points and on the different steps of user journey, right? So once users see your ad for the first time, let's say on Facebook, and then they click on an ad and they go to your app store and they see the same consistent messaging or similar visuals which are relevant for them, which answers their needs, and are all focused around the same theme. And then they move forward, they open the app, they see onboarding, which is again consistent, which is focused about similar features. And then they finally create an account and they got like a customized homepage, right? Which is also answering actually the very first question, let's say the search query that they inputted into Google search when they got our ad displayed, right? So like testing consistency and testing different themes between our ads, our app store, our onboarding, or even later down the funnel paywall definitely works very well for users because it's proven already through like years of testing that consistent messaging when users doesn't really have to think much when they're transitioning from one step to another really works well. It improves the conversion rate. And of course, when the conversion rate is higher, the cost of acquisition usually drop down, they decrease, right? So that's like the first thing. And also when we are talking already about performance marketing, there's a lot that we can do, not only with A/B testing, but also with the newly available features on App Store and Play Store called custom product pages and custom store listing. This is for Android. And with them, we can also provide much higher level of consistency between all of those stages that users have to go through from the ad to our app, right? And it's like a very useful tool which works very well in many different cases. And we can also use those custom product pages to create something, especially if you work with Apple Search Ads. And I know that some of your customers work with Apple Search Ads. We can get even better results if we create a specific structure on our ASA account with keywords grouped into the same theme. So this is called usually SKAGs or stacks, and it stands for single keyword ad group or single theme ad group. And once we build, let's say like 5 different ad groups focused about the same theme. So let's say that we are a trip advisor and we will build one ad group for users who look for flights, then another for users who look for cheap hotels, and the last for users who are looking for guides or for attractions on the place of their vacations. We add specific keywords to them, which gives us much more granularity when it comes to monitoring the performance of those groups. But we can also add very customized creatives, right? So to each of those ad groups, we can add a particular custom product page, towards which later on we'll optimize also our performance marketing or even the onboarding and the way in which our homepage looks like, right? So we are still evolving around the idea of consistent messaging, and we are just using different tools which are available to make sure that we provide it to users.
Yeah, the only complexity here that I see is how do you create onboarding, different onboarding experience for these different groups, because it's currently quite hard to track, sometimes to attribute users accurately to a specific ad campaign. So this can be tricky.
Yeah, that's true. It can be tricky, and it requires a lot of additional third-party tools. And I'm not even sure if it's still completely possible on iOS after iOS 14 changes. So this can be something what works only on Android devices. This is actually a very good point. But even if you would have to resign on iOS from customized, onboarding, because we will no longer be able to get the customer ID with us, it's still very good to optimize the prior steps, right?
Yeah.
Being the ad step and also the App Store.
Yeah, especially it should be very easy to set up with Apple Search Ads specifically, and lead this Apple Search Ads to specific screenshots that are very relevant to these search queries.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, not only sticking to consistency, because I know that right now it's kind of a mainstream almost topic that everyone touches. I would say that, again, we should not forget that marketing is not like an abstract tool. There are certain laws, as I mentioned before, which tend to work over the years, right? And it doesn't mean that this will definitely work for our app, for our customer base, definitely not, but we should test it once we run out of the ideas which were, for example, basing on our qualitative studies, right? And what I mean here is, for example, the Cialdini's principles of persuasion. So there's like a framework of, 6 or 7 principles which are tested and proven to work over time. And one of such principles is, for example, the social proof, right? So the thing that when you show users that others already use your tool, that they are satisfied with it, mostly other users will feel much more confident about your tool, will like to check it out, and that's what works well for them, right? And there are like many other principles similar to that, which are just proven to work. And we can also use them on various stages of the funnel. So let's say if we are talking about screenshots, of course, we want to show that the app is credible, it's reliable, and users can trust us by clicking the download button and later on putting their data inside, right? But if you are talking already about, let's say, paywalls testing, at the very upper part of the paywall, some apps are, for example, using the scarcity element of persuasion. So they are showing that they got something what happens today, right? We got Black Friday today, and the deals are only limited for today. If you don't make an action right now, tomorrow you will have to pay more. So another great example of using scarcity to increase users' motivation, to encourage them more to make a specific action that we require them to do, basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just today I've seen an ad of Calm with 50% discount because of Black Friday, and I actually signed up. So it did work in my case.
Yeah, it could work, and it's all working on us since ages. Not only right now in digital marketing, but also in the more traditional marketing, such as out of home. All of the placements, they are also using that, and it's just all proven to work. So why shouldn't we base on it? And just to add on that, the last thing which comes to my mind is to have our ads, our campaigns, and also our screenshots adjusted, aligned with what's happening outside. What I mean here, have them aligned to, for example, seasonal events, but also have them aligned to cultural differences among the audiences that we are targeting. And with seasonality, it's quite easy, right? So it almost always improves the chances of having a successful campaign once it's aligned with what's happening outside. So if we are talking about Black Friday, we should add some kind of Black Friday customized screenshots, themes, and so on, right? When we are talking about the Christmas, we should do the same. And when we are talking about cultural differences, there are also like widely known cultural differences which we can use while creating messaging for our app, for our ads, for whatever kind of placement we have in our mind, right? So I definitely don't want to go into like stereotypes right now, but it's like a widely known truth that, for example, Germans are much more focused on security, right? While, for example, users from US, they tend to love deals. So once we craft the messaging, maybe we'll focus more about the ensuring German users that with our app, they are safe, their money is safe, whatever they are living inside the app will be protected. While for US users, we will test more those messaging which is focusing around deals, discounts, and additional incentives for them to make an action. So this would be like the 3 or 4 most common principles, methods, tactics I tend to use over and over, and they very often tend to work well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Listen, Matt, I want to be mindful of your time. If anything you personally would like to add to this, or maybe you can tell us how our listeners can find you online, Twitter, LinkedIn, how to best to connect.
Sure. Yes. So I guess the best thing, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, basically by looking for my name and surname. And I guess it may be difficult, but I guess users will see my surname here on the thumbnail. So that's the easiest way to find me. I'm also sharing there some of my thoughts and case studies when it comes to mostly A/B testing and A/B testing on ASO. So some of the things which I have also shared today are already there, and you can just learn more from it.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Have a great day, mate. Bye.